Welcome to the Autonomic Healing Podcast. I'm Tom Pells.
And I'm Ruth Lawrenson. We'll be unpacking what it looks like to activate your brain to holistically manage stress and trauma that bring healing to the mind, body, and spirit.
Being free to live authentically as humans.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started. Today we have Chris DuVernay here as our guest. Chris, I'm really excited that you're here. As I've got to know Tom over this last year, your name has come up multiple times as Tom has recounted this ongoing journey of autonomic healing. And it seems to me anyhow that the intersection of your lives as, fellow therapists and friends now has been pivotal for the development of AHA therapy. So it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Chris.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Would you tell us a little bit about your life now? I know that you live and work in Lafayette, Colorado, and you have your own counseling practice. Can you fill us in a little bit more?
Yeah, so where do I start with numbers? 2004, I got back to grad school at University of Denver after taking a rather long hiatus between my undergrad and graduate work, mostly to rock climb. But
That's healthy.
yeah, it felt pretty good. Felt pretty good. So 2004, got back into University of Denver, their forensic psychology program. Knew that I wanted to go down that road with it into the forensic world. Mm-hmm. Didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but then somewhat stumbled into an internship opportunity in my first year working at a small outpatient clinic in Boulder who had adult offenders, sexual offenders in there, and got in there and did an internship and that stuck. That felt like a calling at that point. So I did that my entire graduate program, graduated in 2006, transitioned into juvenile offense specific work, working for a large nonprofit in Denver. Did that for a long time, almost 10 years. And then with some overlap at the end of that time, started a part-time private practice, overlapped a little bit for about a year and a half, and then transitioned fully into private practice. And I've been doing that ever since.
And your private practice is called?
Oh, it's Crux Counseling. It's stolen from the climbing world. The crux is the hardest part of a route.
There you go.
And so often when the thinking was when people are coming in, they're often dealing with the hardest part of something. So
yeah,
that's
so
where
true.
I like the alignment. Plus I like the double C's.
Mm-hmm.
The alliteration of it is nice.
Well, all about alliteration.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Well, the reason why you're here is obviously you and Tom know each other, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but you actually practice, you're a certified AHA therapist. You in fact, you were one of the first, you were the first therapist that Tom trained, which we'll get into in a bit. But I just really want to know how this relationship started. Where did it all begin? Tom, do you want to start us off with that?
Yeah, I also I had a private practice, small thing, 1999, but I'd been in offense-specific forensic psychotherapy for probably 15 years around that time, that I figured out how to activate homeostasis, AHA. And I was seeing the results with clients related to their trauma. That is what I still see. And but I was the director of research and assessment, and I was doing the psychological testing for an agency that I worked with for almost 18 years. And so I was seeing these results, particularly, and we won't get into the minutia of the specifics, but there is a way to assess people's sexual interest. And I was doing all of those. And happenstance that I had done AHA with a client who it wasn't what I was calling it at the time. That was before I realized I created something, but I was using the nascent protocol. And so I happened to do this person's sexual interest assessment shortly after I had just happened to do the trauma treatment. Mm-hmm. And this was an individual who had never had what's called a normative sexual interest assessment. In other words, he always had, at a clinically significant level, sexual interest in kids. Mm-hmm. And I had just treated him for the trauma with the protocol I'd developed, and circumstantially had been the one that did the interest assessment and saw the results, and the interest in kids was gone. It just wasn't there. And I got really excited about that, because that is one of the most difficult things in treatment to address. And it's also one of the highest risk factors for reoffending. So this was a huge thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost unheard of.
Yeah.
Where you prior to this, all the treatment interventions designed to address unhealthy arousal were essentially not effective.
To be honest, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have this client that you're seeing, and you're kind of doing some of this AHA therapy, which isn't called AHA at the time, and then what you find is this huge turnaround, really.
Oh, unprecedented. Okay. I was like, this. How did this happen? This shouldn't happen. How this connects with Chris is that we were both in forensic psychotherapy. There was an annual conference. I presented at the annual conference, and I, because I was very excited. At the time, there were 7 individuals that I'd had the same result with, which was, one, unprecedented to start with, but that it was 7 of them. And I presented at the conference the results of this, and I hadn't met Chris, and we didn't know each other.
No, we hadn't crossed paths.
And so Chris attended that presentation at the conference that I'd done, and I'll let you pick up the story from there, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, the typical conference selection occasionally leaves something to be desired. So when I saw the head
professional organizations and put something up.
I mean, especially when you go year after year, which I was doing at the time. Mm-hmm. So when I saw Tom's conference heading, I was intrigued because I'd never heard of the protocol and was unfamiliar with it. So it was something new. So I signed up for it, and then after listening to him for an hour and a half present on the results, I still didn't know anything about the protocol that he was using.
It was all focused on, these are the results of this treatment related to sexual interest and trauma.
Which the results are fascinating, but I was interested in how he got there. And so I learned that he was essentially local, and shortly after, about a week after the conference, reached out via email to try to get together and pick his brain a little bit. I think that's almost verbatim what I said in my email. And eventually we connected, sat down, and I just started essentially asking questions about this protocol that he had. Well, it was in progress at this point.
Yeah.
And that was probably the first of many times that we met somewhat casually, and then eventually I got roped in even further to it.
I'm curious about that though, because you know, like obviously the results that stood out a mile to you. You're in the same, very unique setting for therapy for offenders, and then you see this dramatic result, which you've put this presentation on. It's not just the one now, it's multiple people.
I had 7 at the time. I'm up to 17.
Wow. But then, you kind of jumped into this, didn't you? You didn't just you went for coffee, but I know you've done you followed through with some of your own therapy with Tom. You finally got certified as well, so that you're actually practicing AHA now, which again we'll get into in a little bit. But what was it about this for you that was the pull, and why did you jump in with this space?
Yeah. I mean, it was two things. One, I had a very personal connection to, a vicarious personal connection to the process. Mm-hmm. Someone close to me went through an AHA session to overcome a traumatic event. Yeah. That prior to finding and using AHA for, we had done everything. All the traditional things to confront trauma, EMDR, acupuncture.
And EMDR is the gold standard.
It's the gold standard. Yeah. And this person went through, I think, 2 sessions and just nothing. No, virtually zero progress. Maybe even a regression after the second session, which, is not uncommon.
No.
With that approach. And so part of it was, after talking with Tom, was hearing the potential of AHA as an intervention for trauma. Was intriguing, but part of it was desperation. We were kind of at the end of our rope, so got this done. And once I saw the results firsthand, at this point in 17, 18 at this point,
like that, yeah.
I had never seen any single intervention work as effectively as AHA for something that was so kind of woven into the fabric of this person's new identity, of a trauma identity.
Yeah.
And so after seeing that dramatic shift, and I was all in. I reached out to Tom pretty quickly after that, and not only did my own session, but then started the training process.
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of the narrative there, and I've been doing it ever since.
You've been doing it, and we were just sharing earlier, just before we started this episode, about how what life is like right now for you as a therapist, and love you to unpack a little bit. But I know that you're doing probably next to Tom, you're doing a lot of AHA sessions a week now. It's a really big part of your practice as you're treating offenders. But do you want to just share a little bit about what you're seeing there?
Yeah. And you were the connection with Josh, who was in a prior episode.
Right.
You did that session. Unknowingly, you did.
I was the connection there. Yeah. So I do have a increasingly diverse caseload. I still see a relatively high percentage of court-mandated sex offense specific therapy clients. I would love to reduce that number, and sort of. I have mixed feelings about that. I like that population, but I also recently started some contract work with a Department of Human Services in the state, and that's when my AHA numbers really started blowing up. I presented to this department, to all of their caseworkers across all of the child protection, child welfare, ongoing case management. I was apparently talking to the entire team, and after that presentation, there was a bit of a lull, which I expected in referrals after being a new, relatively unknown quantity to this department. But then, one trickled in, and then the next, and then they started coming pretty consistently.
They were seeing results.
And the stack of referrals now is, I was telling Tom earlier, I almost need like one of those accordion files for the referral stack now, which is great. So yeah, I mean, I'm probably doing 1 to 3 a week right now, and as I maybe mentioned earlier, I think I've done the amount this year that I had done the previous 2 combined. So that's kind of a nice growth curve with this.
Yeah, and so I mean, just to clarify that, one session is quite a big session, isn't it? So it's like
4 to 6 hours.
4 to 6 hours
for 85-90% of people.
Yeah, and I have because of this connection with the human services, I am working with a lot of minors. And so those sessions tend to be a little shorter. It's like 2 to 4 instead of 4 to 6. And that gives me a little more flexibility to schedule a couple AHA in a single day. I don't like doing that when I'm working with an adult because I really never know when it's going to end. So
I've done that.
Yeah.
2, and there was a physician who will in another location who will bring me there, and it's just a marathon thing. We'll do 2 or 3 of them, and that's for a whole week, and it's like
2's tricky. I've done 2 adult sessions in a day.
It gets to be very long.
It's very long.
Yeah.
What I'm doing a fair amount of right now is a 1 adult, 1 child. I'm doing those quite often because I dedicate 2 days a week just to AHA.
Wow.
So Monday and Thursdays. And Thursday I have all day.
So you mentioned it. You're up to a couple hundred.
You're probably close. Yeah. Probably within the next month or so, I'll hit the 200 marker. Yeah.
And what are you seeing? I'd love to hear any stories that you're seeing because I mean, one of the things that we love talking about in this podcast is just, the transformation stories really of people who are stuck or people who are traumatized, and as they go through HA, that we're seeing the normalization happen as they enter into homeostasis, and it's just fascinating to hear it from another person who's practicing. So any stories that you can share at all? Yeah, I mean, the one that I like telling the most isn't about someone who's done AHA. It's actually when I'm leaving for work in the morning, my wife knows what I'm going to be doing based on my mood.
Really?
Because it's so effective. I'm just in a better mood when I'm going to do an AHA.
So in a subversive way, it's therapy for you.
It's therapy for me because I know when the session is done, we will have done some genuine work.
Oh, I totally
that
relate
you
to that.
Can't get to through talk therapy.
It is so satisfying to know going in that no matter how high those levels of stress and anxiety and depression and anger and the reactivity to the trauma experiences, it's not going to be there.
It's not going to be there. Exactly.
And as a therapist, and see, for me, that's what I was searching for.
Yeah.
There was so much as a therapist that I just couldn't touch. And the reason I couldn't touch it is because it was neurobiological. It wasn't cognitive. It wasn't talking through things. It was just in their non-normalized, no homeostasis related to trauma. And to be able to get at that is incredibly satisfying. And it is. Which
speaks to the protocol itself. Knowing as you're sitting down, starting an AHA session with someone who's coming in, by the time people are coming in for an AHA session...
Oh, they've been through everything. Yep.
And they've been in talk therapy for years. They've been in, all manner of interventions. Some
I can't tell
more
you the
effective
number
than
of clients
others
who have said to me when they've heard about AHA through, usually it's always been through family and friends, but now with a podcast, people are finding just autonomic healing and Googling it and finding it. And I can't tell you the number of clients, and chime in on this, but who have literally said to me, there isn't anything out there that I haven't tried.
Right. Oh, I would say 2 out of 3 clients that I see have, say something like that. I've done everything. I've been in, talk therapy for a decade. We've tried every, from meds to, the whole gamut has been run. But knowing that by the time we're done, usually in that single session, that they're going to be walking out of there tired, but feeling probably better than they felt in a long time. Is very satisfying. And it's something that I kind of keeps me going with my non-AHA work, quite frankly. I still love doing talk therapy, and it is effective, but the comparison is it's unfair almost.
Talk to us about what you've experienced as far as those clients who do talk therapy, who do continue with psychotherapy. Josh Korak was talking about this. It's just a different dynamic when you can normalize that trauma response. You could talk about stuff and it's not traumatizing.
Absolutely. And I've seen,
and then they can truly reprocess. They can rethink. They can, talk about.
So the place where I see this the most specifically is in my court-mandated caseload.
Because they have to see you.
One, they have to keep coming back.
They can't just drop out.
Right? And so there's been a small percentage of that caseload where I've been able to do AHA with those clients. And the results are pretty dramatic. For a lot of reasons. One, addressing their own trauma. Obviously, that's why I was angling for it in the first place. But the long-term benefit of ongoing cognitive behavioral work post AHA, and with all the other elements that come with kind of the amount of system engagement that these clients have, working through often probation, often polygraph exams. So the benefit of AHA in all of those realms, not just in the trauma, not just in their overall sexual health, but it's a more global shift towards health. Their interactions with all the other facets of this ongoing system are just more productive. Whether
they don't sense and react as if that's a threat.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just something that
it is
a responsibility that they have.
That they have
Those
in their
are
lives.
the conditions of their community supervision, and they just get on with it.
Yes. So I think I see it kind of most starkly in, and this is something that we hadn't chatted about, but polygraph examination.
See, I've got some interesting stories about even though, and I haven't been in the field for several years now because this just kind of took over my life and I went into private practice and this is what I do. And I didn't really have the kind of latitude because for a variety of reasons to do a lot of this in offense-specific work.
Sure.
I just didn't have the latitude to do that. But I consistently, routinely keep getting referrals from therapists, probation, parole, and it's with clients who are struggling. They're not successful. They're failing polygraphs. And that's a curious one. And I want to hear what your response is to that. Because the truth, it's
the truth
very,
will set you free.
You will know the truth and the truth will set you free. But it's knowing the truth that can be such a threat. Yeah. We love the second part of that. The truth will set you free. But it's knowing the truth, and the truth can be such a threat to well-being. It's why so many conversations are not truthful. They're true. And we'll do a podcast, I'm sure, Ruth, about true and truth and some of my thoughts about that. But it does show up related to polygraphs. And I've had a number of clients who have been referred to me offense specific because they have to take polygraphs. Right. What are you doing in the community? Who you have in contact with? Monitoring, and about their sexual history. Imagine taking a polygraph about all of the things you have ever done sexually. That's a thing.
That's a thing.
And that's something to be truthful. But that can be such a threat.
It's a huge threat.
It's having to, but being able to just have that be what it is.
Yeah, to be informational instead of an existential threat.
Beautifully.
Yeah.
Couldn't have said that better. And I'm going to quote you on that.
Okay.
So let's write that one down, Ruth. That it's, what did you say? Just informational.
It's informational,
not an existential threat. And existential means life and death.
Right.
And that is the level of reactivity frequently.
Right.
And consistently.
And
clients who do the AHA and AHA and the problem solving, the PS to get at the cognitive kind of stuff, they pass their polygraphs.
Yeah.
They are able to be truthful and just let the truth be what it is, lay it out there, not see issues of if I talk about this, I'm going to be in trouble. It just is what it is and can move forward and manage my life. That's the thing I've seen.
Yeah, that's what I see too, is all of my polygraph eligible clients who have done AHA no longer have issues with the outcomes.
No.
Like I would have to go back and do a more comprehensive assessment, but anecdotally, that cohort who has done AHA, when a poly's coming up, they just get it scheduled and they go do it because it's a thing.
Yeah.
And it's not a threat to their identity. It's not a threat to their terms and conditions of their probation.
And they don't view it as a threat to their liberty.
Right.
They see it now as this is something that keeps me free. I get to be.
They get to demonstrate fidelity to their conditions through these. Instead of it, well, they're trying to catch me at doing something wrong. It's, I get to demonstrate that I'm following the rules.
Yeah.
Which is a rare thing in that realm.
Yeah.
Can I just interject here, Tom? I just find it, so far, I think, in this podcast, we've talked a lot about people coming to you or other AHA therapists for trauma and stuff like this. But this... these clients that you're talking, I think it's a really, the fact that you guys both have been in this space with offenders, it's some of the hardest stuff that you're going to deal with. So I just find it really, I'm really grateful that we were having this conversation because I think it's unique, the type of things that you're hitting with sexual offenders. Like, in my world, we're not even thinking about polygraphs, so...
I would hope not.
So I'm just curious if we could just go into that a little bit more about some of the dynamics, the benefits of AHA in this space of offenders. We just touched on that.
Well, think of offense-specific treatment as getting at, and every session is about the things that you have experienced, the behaviors you have engaged in, that have harmed yourself and others at levels that society deems intolerable and stigmatizes, rightly so, and is completely traumatizing to everybody. And the levels of shame and guilt and fear and self-condemnation that are attached to that. And you're mandated to talk about all that.
Yeah.
And you don't get to not talk about it and remain in the community. It's all, everything in your life is out on the table. And so, how threatening that can be.
So what you're finding then is through AHA, as they reach homeostasis, just even that threat of I have to share.
It's not experienced.
That's not experienced.
It's a gateway to self-understanding. Yeah. It's an opportunity to know themselves. And it's not viewed as a threat, it's viewed as a enlightenment. That's the kind of feedback that
it enables the elimination of shame.
Yeah.
Which is this construction that if someone, anyone, everyone, in some cases, knows a thing about me, and for my clients, it's knows their offense history, knows their trauma history, and often that's knotted up together in this nasty little trauma ball.
Yeah.
If that is out there, everyone will reject me. That is what shame is about.
Because many have.
And there's anecdotal evidence. There's actual evidence. This is a real and perceived dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
And so what AHA has enabled with the clients that I've done sessions with who have been ongoing is this detachment of shame and identity.
Because the attachment is trauma.
Right.
That's what keeps the connection.
Is trauma.
Yeah.
Right. It explains why they behaved the way they did during their offense, by and large. And why they're operating the way that they are in my office prior to a session where they're, we use terms like guarded, defensive, reluctant. I'm like, yeah, it's self-preservation at that point.
Yeah.
They sense those subjects as threats.
Yes.
Because of the trauma that is attached to that, it is a threat.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a threat. And after HA, it's not a threat.
And so that's a real game changer then, to just allow someone to come in, detach the shame, so they can actually start the process of healing.
Yes. And because for me, I have the latitude now, because I'm not in offense-specific treatment anymore. And I have a private practice. And I can treat anybody and everybody who comes to me. And so I treat not just those who have offended, but I treat many, many people because of AHA who have been offended.
Yeah.
And they are the ones who have been victimized. And that's no longer defining. That isn't an identity anymore. Just as offending isn't an identity anymore. And for me, what I've noticed is that it shifts out of that victim and offender paradigm, which simply enslaves everybody, because it fundamentally compromises identity. I'm not a human being. I am a victim. I am an offender.
Right.
Or vicariously, because of the connection with someone that you love and care for, and they have experienced that, then that can turn into a victim and offender paradigm. That's a whole... And to see that no longer be the paradigm, and that I'm a human being, regardless of what I've experienced, or... Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even beyond that, I don't know, it's hard to capture sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm picking up a couple threads here. The ongoing work post AHA with my court mandated clients, when I get into this stuff, is just easier. There's just less of that, all the terms that we like. Clinical resistance isn't a thing.
Yeah. Treatment resistance isn't a thing. And so doing the work that we're doing, I find that I don't, post AHA, I don't have to spend a lot of time rehashing history, because all of that is an effort on my end to find access to this person. But after AHA, the door is open. Yeah. And they're not fighting me walking through. Most of the time, they're inviting me in. Yeah.
And that is what, when we talk about what makes an effective and good therapist, we talk about the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And this gets us to this point where we've got a relationship because I've sat through all their stuff.
Yeah.
With them. So it's this like actualization of, they know everything. They witnessed me experiencing it.
Yeah.
Through a session, and they were still here when I opened my eyes.
I'm curious, related to that, and being the therapist for people who have been traumatized, I would love to hear, because I know what my response, I heard from Josh and Brittany, your own experience that would be in the category of vicarious trauma. And your experience of that relative to AHA.
I mean, I think the functionality that AHA has had for me in relation to the work that I'm doing is that I think it extended my professional life.
Wow.
Because
you've been doing it a long time. I was in it 18 plus years.
Yeah.
But you're at...
Well, I'm at 18 right now.
Yeah.
And I've got some years ahead of me, I hope. But
well, I would hope.
I also don't feel burnout. And typically 18 years doing offense-specific work...
That's a long time.
That's a long time.
Oh, yeah. Most... I remember at the agency that I was at, we would have therapists and new therapists.
Yeah.
Year and a half, 2, 3, and just done because it's just so taxing.
Yeah. I mean, so it has provided me with a tool for longevity in the field that I want to be in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I like... No, I don't like it. I love the work.
Yeah.
And I feel like this, being able to do my own AHA sessions after a long day, after a long week, allows me not to take on any of that vicarious trauma. Because I hear a lot of unpleasant stuff.
Oh, yeah. It's the nature of it.
It is.
And that's why, for me, when you were saying that one of the biggest indicators was it's a good day.
Yeah, I know I'm going to have a good day here.
Yeah.
And so do you, so talk a little bit about how, obviously as part of your training with AHA in the early days, part of the training is to go through it. So you went through the somatic, the cognitive, and the spiritual? I
haven't done the spiritual.
Okay.
No. It's not my lane.
Fair enough.
But I have done the somatic and the
problem solving.
The problem solving.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's just the reset, the resetting, but you talk about your week and how it's helping you. How does it play out for you? What do you... I remember when I did my AHA session with Tom, he talked about it like brushing your teeth. Yeah. Morning and evening. Yeah. Just do...
An analogy I still use with clients.
Yeah.
Right. I also use this one of the session in the office is spring cleaning, but you still have to wipe down the counters at home.
Awesome. I'm going to steal that from you.
So I probably do one of my own personal kind of maintenance AHA sessions. I certainly do it once a week, but that's probably the minimum. And it's based on your workload that day, content that day, and time and fatigue. But generally, it's more experiential based. My decision to do a session or not, or my wife saying, "You should do a session."
You need to do it.
Getting a little stressed.
I'm noticing some things.
The tsunami's here.
We should do some sessions.
Which is interesting because that is a very loving way for someone.
Yeah.
To give you a sense of, here's a really positive thing that you can do, and I love you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you'll be more yourself. Because stress unmanaged, we're not ourselves.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just so good to have you here, Chris. But I'm thinking, just before we wrap up this episode, I'm just curious about if you have any like reflections. You know, we're obviously in a really different space right now, past COVID. Are you seeing any kind of needs, challenges in your practice, in the mental health landscape that you think, or any solutions or any hopes and dreams? I mean, that was a big question, but just curious if you wanted to.
Yes. So one of the ways that COVID in particular affected the work that I was doing was, and Tom and I kind of took this in different directions, actually, which has been interesting. He went almost exclusively virtual with his sessions. And probably because of the relative newness for me of the protocol, I went the other way. I was like, well, during this full lockdown, I'm not going to do any because I want the person in the office. I value that interaction so much. And
I love that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's my preference. And, being in private practice, I get to dictate those things. I could be like, this is how I want to construct this. So there was a time in 2020 after the lockdowns where I had sessions scheduled that I had to cancel and didn't have to, chose to, because I could have done them virtually, but I opted not to. And so that kind of closed my AHA door for several months where I wasn't doing sessions. And then as things started, we hit another lull, and simultaneously demand was going up as a result of what we were seeing through COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Which I feel like I'm still in that same place as far as need. I am busier than I've ever been in my practice, and the diversity of the referrals that I'm getting is wider than I've ever experienced.
Chris, I feel like we could chat for hours, and we'll certainly get you back on. Yeah. We love having you as part of this podcast, and also just I feel so encouraged that you're doing this AHA therapy for so many people as well here in Colorado. Thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom that offers autonomic healing.
Yeah, and I so appreciate having a colleague.
Likewise.
That this isn't a foreign language and to what?
Yes.
To be able to just talk with.
Yeah.
Who has that kind of experience.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invite. I feel like I could just keep chatting. Thank you again.
You've been listening to the Autonomic Healing Podcast.
Join us next time as we continue in our conversations with Tom. If you're interested in pursuing your own autonomic healing journey and want to find a practitioner, visit our website, innerworkings.org. See you at the next episode.